We're live. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Self Publishing Insiders. I'm Jim Azevedo, the corporate communications lead here at Drafty Digital. And joining me today, it's my privilege and honor to welcome Tao Wong. Tao is a prolific author of science fiction and fantasy, and the founder, or the co-founder, of the Toronto Indie Authors Conference. So welcome, Tao.
Thank you, James. I'm very grateful to be here.
Well, we are grateful to have you. And I was telling you sort of backstage about how when we kick off Self-Publishing Insiders episodes, I don't typically dive right into the topic at hand. And maybe I drive some of our viewers crazy that way, but I always feel like it's important to talk about our guest's background a little bit, to learn a bit more about what got you to where you are today. And as I was diving into your background, and I mentioned this to you earlier, but I was
Mhm.
blown away. Now, listen to this, everybody. So, Tao, correct me if I'm wrong, but you first started writing in early 2017. Is that correct? And
Yeah, for the work that I actually published. Yeah.
okay, and then you published your first novel, and so you started
Mm.
writing early 2017.
Yep.
Published your first novel in mid 2017,
Yep.
and then early 2019 you started writing full time.
Yep.
Wow. So what are your secrets? Because my background, like I go back to the days of Smashwords, and the whole indie publishing
Yep.
movement began in 2008. I joined the team in 2011, and I remember people who began publishing in 2011, 2012, um, thinking that, oh my gosh, we missed the self-publishing gold rush. It's over for us because that all happened between 2009 and 2000, or 2008 and 2010. And
Hmm.
then here you are in 2017 saying, how
I got
how'd you do
lucky.
it?
I always tell people I got very lucky.
Okay.
I wrote into lit RPG, which was a very hot genre. It was just
Mm,
starting out. Like 2016 was when it really hit North America. It really so I was in what I consider the second wave of lit RPG authors who came along, and I got very lucky when I stumbled upon the genre. Just wrote for fun
yeah.
on to begin with on Royal Road. Turned around, realized I had a book, and went, you know what, I'm going to publish it, and I threw it
Yeah.
up on Amazon.
And what
Um,
is RPG for some of the viewers who may not know what that is?
it stands for literary role playing game, and
Okay.
it's the idea of taking um, game mechanics and making it front and center of a book. So it's a very hard magic system where people can get level ups, where there are monsters with levels, where killing things gives you experience, as an example. And there's
Hmm.
a very clear definition and about how the game system and how the magic system works, basically.
Okay.
And so you manipulate that magic system. The characters manipulate the magic system in a very specific and very conscious manner. So it's different from something like reading the old school Dragonlance books, which were
Okay.
all based on Dungeons and Dragons and TSR and so on and so forth.
Hmm.
But you never saw the game mechanics, right? It was never part of and parcel. People never, the characters never knew about it.
Yeah.
So with literary role-playing games, lit RPG books, you are the characters do know what's happening. They do see the system. They do understand, and part of it is understanding the system. They are trying to understand it to game the system in the best way. And it's a very hot genre. It's still
Yeah.
relatively hot. It's kind of maturing now.
Hmm.
So new entrants aren't coming in as hot, but some of the biggest books out there, Shirtaloon's He Who Fights with Monsters, Matt Dinnerman's Dungeon Crawler Carl, Wandering
Okay.
In, they're all lit RPG, and so they're still tearing up the charts. I just got lucky and came in at about 2017, and then I put in a lot of work because
Yeah.
luck
You,
gets you the initial burst. After that, it's all work and doing the work. to keep writing. And by about 2019, I had enough books out that it made sense for me to go full time. That was also when my previous business, it was time to transition out of it.
Okay. Timing. It sounds like your timing on multiple respects was just kind of hidden.
Oh God, yes. So it's just a side note. My old business was a game store. And we actually had a physical retail location in 2019. And the lease came up and they wanted to triple my lease amount. So I would be paying about 30 something plus $1,000 a month easily, and then tax. That's when I decided to close the business down, because I was just like, I'm not paying that. And, you know, we all know what happened in 2020. And so, I'm, you know, when you say luck, I'm just,
I kind of dodged that bullet.
A retail store in 2020, paying 30 something $1,000 a month, I would be crying.
Oh yeah, that's wow. It's like the universe kind of conspired to set you down this path, and then you found this niche. You entered into it, and then from there, then that niche just started expanding.
Yep.
Did you decide? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go.
I was just going to ask you, did you always know right off the bat that you were going to self-publish, or did you have anybody who was kind of mentoring you? Like, how did you learn how to do what you did?
So when I said I actually just threw up the book, I was pretty much that. You know, I had my own business at that time. I was, I didn't have I was self-employed. So, you know, I was working 50, 60 hours a week anyway, on top of writing. I didn't really have time to look for a trad pub agent. I didn't feel like, you know, I wanted to go through that rigmarole. And I have been a business geek for ages, you know. And so I actually ran into Kristen Catherine Rucher's blog, Just Writes, I don't know, ages ago in 2014, 2015 or something. And I'd started reading her book, her blog, you know, on and off, just because it was fascinating reading about publishing. And, you know, there's a small portion of me that wanted to be a writer. You know, I always thought it was when I was in my 50s or 60s.
Did you have that? Oh, really? Did you have those aspirations of like becoming a best-selling author and sitting back in your leather chair?
I don't know about being a best-selling author, just being an author, right? I've been telling stories to myself mostly since I was a kid. You know, I've written a couple of books beforehand, you know, none of them good, none of them that will ever be seen. I've written short stories. Some of them are decent. And I've sent them out, but it wasn't something that I had the time or huge amount of energy to go, I'm going to become a, you know, author. And so when I threw out these books, these RPG books, it was with the intention of just putting it out there, because I had written them and I was like, okay, these aren't bad. You know, they're not great, but, you know, they're not bad. I'm relatively proud of them. And I didn't have the energy to go through the entire hunting for an agent and doing all of that. So I just kind of tossed it out there, see what happened.
It sounds like you've kind of got this entrepreneurial blood flowing through your veins, and you've had that for a while, and maybe self-publishing appeals to you more than most.
It definitely does. I am incredibly fortunate in both my educational background as well as having run a business for 12 years, basically, since 2007, before I shut it down in 2019. So I have all that.
2007?
Yeah.
Said?
Yeah. Wow. That's when I started Citadel. So yeah, I've had a business for ages. And so transitioning into self-publishing was easy.
Yeah. Well, that's quite the advantage compared to most of us out here who are a little bit like, well, how am I going to do this on my own? There's so much, and it sounds like it's so overwhelming. But we'll get to that.
Yep.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, I was very fortunate. I mean, I have I knew all the legal side, all the tax side, all the financial and accounting side, even the marketing side.
Okay.
Having to learn the specifics of this industry was it required time, but
Sure.
understanding marketing in general was pretty simple. I mean, that's my background. So
Yeah, you can apply the concepts of marketing to any industry, really, and the basics of it for
mhm.
sure. Now you said the sort of the business mechanics were required reading. Um, so that kind of leads me into shifting gears for you and
Yep.
talking about conferences and conventions. I'm anticipating that you're going to say conferences are part of that required reading, if you will, or the required attendance as far as author education goes, from both, I would say, from both an educational perspective, but also a networking perspective. So I'm curious, when did you stumble across your first conference, and what did that do for you?
Oh God, I think I knew about them kind of peripherally for
Okay,
ages, right? Both
sure,
the more trad pub ones like the Nebulas and World
sure,
Fantasy and whatnot. And
okay,
I think it was only in 2018 that I started knowing about more indie author specific ones. 20 books to 50K probably was the first one that I really learned about. And
around
I
2018-ish for that
Yeah,
one.
2018-ish or so. I didn't
Okay.
decide to go and do anything. And then
Hmm.
I think it was 2019 where they decided to, yeah, it was 2019. I learned about the Glasgow, no, sorry, Edinburgh conference for 20 books. And I went,
Okay.
hey, that's a writing retreat and it's in Edinburgh, which I love as a city. And I went, you know what?
Sure.
And it wasn't too expensive for me to fly out there. Um,
Okay.
and I have family over in the UK, so I wanted to visit them.
Oh,
So it
perfect.
all
Yeah,
kind of worked
it all
out
works
really
out.
well.
The universe is conspiring again for you, but
Yeah, exactly. And so I went for it. I went to the Edinburgh one, and it was such a great experience because it was a smaller conference
mhm.
compared to Vegas.
Yeah, compared to 20 bucks.
Yeah, exactly. And so there was like 200 people, maybe. I think maybe not even
Hmm.
that.
So not a tiny conference, but
Yeah,
manageable,
exactly.
not thousands.
Exactly. And so it was a good introduction. I met a lot of people, some of which became good friends, including a
Hmm.
co-author of mine. And I went, okay, let's keep doing this. And the networking aspects, I think, was a huge thing. The
Hmm.
right Because it's interesting for me learning about the business side because I have this deep background in running a business.
Hmm.
There are large chunks of the business side that I just look at it and go, oh, yeah, I know that.
Okay.
um, and then there's very specific author things that I'm just sitting there going, oh, okay, right, time to learn this. Like
Okay.
Facebook.
There's some things
And
that were just eye-opening for you at that
yeah,
first conference. Yeah.
yeah, for
What
sure.
what took you by surprise? Can you remember what kind of took you by surprise, or was, I guess, maybe the most eye-opening for you, where you kind of sat up and thought, "Oh,
I think
didn't
for
realize
me,
this."
the two things that were particularly interesting in that first conference was um, Calytics. They were talking about
Analytics.
what's,
Yeah.
the specific information coming out for each industry and how they came out. So I was looking at all of that and the
Mm.
metadata use to go and expand your audience when you were putting it into Amazon and so forth. So that was actually it was very industry specific. It's not something you'd ever learn or need to learn if you want in publishing. So that was
Yeah.
particularly surprising. The other one at that time was AMS ads, and I was only beginning to dip my toe into AMS ads, and
Hmm.
uh, AMS really, it's very strange to me because I have experience with Google ads, and
Hmm.
Google ads, if you look at it, looks sort of and functions sort of similar to AMS ads. It does use keywords. It has broad,
Hmm.
exact phrase settings for it, and so forth. But when you actually get into the details in how AMS and Google Ads work, they're different. They function in how they spend your money and what they'll spend your money on and how fast they'll spend your money in a very different ways. So my background actually in Google Ads was tripping me up when I was trying to do.
That's interesting.
AMS. And I know I couldn't make, AMS ads is well known for not wanting to spend your money, which is completely different from Google Ads. And I couldn't understand it. So that conference actually, I don't remember if it was a discussion with someone or it was a seminar, but it started giving me an idea of what was happening and why it was so different.
Okay, so that was an integral part of that conference for you, like that industry specific information. But you also just touched on another key aspect in that sometimes it's not just the planned workshop sessions or the presentations, it's the conversations in the lounge or in the bars or outside of those venues. Now, so how many conferences approximately do you attend every year?
Oh God.
I'll put you on the spot.
Specific one. I mean, last year I counted, I did about 7 conferences, which was a lot. This year I'm cutting it back. I mean, some of them weren't industry specific ones. Some of them were like DragonCon and CanCon, which are somewhat industry specific, somewhat fan based ones. So kind of mix. Industry specific ones last year, I know I did Nink, 20 books to 50K Vegas. A few others I can't remember. I most recently was in Ireland for the auto sustainability conference that was started up there.
Is that the Ireland one?
Yeah, that was the Ireland one.
Okay.
So I probably do between 3 or 4 industry specific ones, and then a couple of more generic sort of trad pub and industry ones a year.
Okay. Now, do you feel that, or when you look at maybe your travel schedule for the year and you're trying to decide which conferences you want to go to, do you look at them in terms of, well, maybe this conference is based more on craft, and this conference is based more on the business or networking, or maybe it's reader focused? Do you attend reader focused events as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, DragonCon's very much reader focused. CanCon. This year I'll be going to the WorldCon in Glasgow. So that's another to me, it's more reader focused, and that's my goal. There is some trad pub stuff in there too. I do very much try to do at least a couple of reader focused ones and a couple of the business ones. For me, the business ones, I look at it as the ones that I want to see people that I know. So networking events. Generally, that's either going to be 20 books to 50K, or what used to be 20 books to 50K, or Nink, because both of those I see some of my friends at. And then outside of that,
I missed you at Nink last year. I was in 2023.
Yeah. I don't know if I'll be going this year. We'll have to see. I've begun to hit a point where going to these conferences for information every year and multiple of them doesn't make sense. And so it's becoming I have to decide which ones are worthwhile, because it's taking away time from writing and all of that stuff. But definitely networking is one of the major ones at this stage, and just getting hold of people or speaking with people who are, at a more advanced level, who are facing the same problems as I am, right? Because once you've hit a certain number of books and revenue levels and so on and so forth, and you need those conversations, because it's not something necessarily that most conferences can get you. Because if only 5 people need to talk about this small specific thing, it doesn't make sense to have this whole seminar going on for it. And that's one of the things I like about Nink, where they have these tiny round tables.
Yep. It sounds like you feel that the most essential part of any conference is the networking aspect of it. Yeah. Do you think that that is the case even for authors who maybe they haven't published their first book yet. Maybe they're working on their first manuscript and they're considering, is this conference worth it for me in terms of cost and time?
I
Or
think,
am I just, go ahead.
yeah. I think that really depends on the individual to some extent and how
Okay.
far they are. I think that in most cases, you really do want, people who are on the same journey with you. And so,
Makes sense.
and had someone who's, a level or two higher. It can be hard if, if you haven't published a book and you're trying to talk to someone who's got, 200 books out. It's just the perspectives are so different, especially if someone's published in 2011, right? They don't understand debut authors, right? Unless they've launched a pen name recently, which is a very different thing. They just don't, because it's a completely different market right now compared to 2011.
The world has changed, sure.
Exactly. So meeting with people who are coming up through the same thing, who are, learning the same things as you, it's a mental thing, it's emotional support. It's also knowledge, because you can start trading around things that you've learned, and also marketing to some extent, especially if they're like a level or two higher than you. If you've not published, someone who's published for a couple of books or even 4 or 5, been out for a year or two, they've got a bit more of a base. Hopefully, they've got a newsletter, they've got people who are reading, especially in your genre. They can help you push your books, if they enjoy it, obviously, to their audience. And it doesn't hurt them, or at least in my view, it doesn't really hurt people, because, readers don't just read one book, generally speaking. They read multiples. And so if you're putting them out there, it helps both of you, right, as it goes along. And so I think it does, that networking and meeting people and getting to know them is important.
It is such a relationship business. It's such a word of mouth business. And I think that what a lot of the newer authors don't realize when they go to their first conference is that you're going to be exposed to so many people. And it could be publishers, it could be editors, it could be agents, it could be your fellow authors. It's all these people who down the line, it might seem odd to you if you haven't published your first book yet, but you're going to be exposed to so many people that down the line can open doors for you, and you'll see that will come to fruition at some point, and maybe not in the not too distant future.
And I think there's a lot to be said about just learning, passively, before you're ready to publish, before you're just beginning to learn. There's so much to understand about running a business, about doing all of these things, and you can only take in so much at a time. So if you're coming in before you're ready to publish, or you just publish, there's things that you can keep learning and adding on. It's like building a house, right? You're just adding one brick here, one brick there. And if you're trying to do it over a period of time, it's a lot easier than trying to just cram it all up really quickly. Some people work like that, and it works well, but it's easier if you spend a bit of time.
For sure. And you mentioned a little nugget I wanted to go back to, and when it comes to attending conferences, especially at the same level as networking with people, and that's emotional support. And I think that is so true. You probably met authors, as I have, where perhaps it's their first time at a conference, and they're kind of like, they're scared to death. They tell you like, oh, this is my first conference, and I'm terrified. I'm terrified to go out there and meet people. And then you see them 2 days or 3 days later, and like, oh my gosh, best experience of my life. They come away with new best friends forever, new BFFs and besties, and it's just amazing.
Yeah, so, and it's always fun, especially if you are the first person to introduce them to a group, and then they start talking, and they just. I had that happen at DragonCon, actually, with a young lady who was just starting out, writing and also being a book blogger and proofing. And she was very hesitant. She's like, I don't know anyone here. So I introduced her to one group of people that I knew. And then, they started talking, and I disappeared because I had someone else to talk to. Come back 2 hours later, and she's moved to a different group, and happily chatting away. 2 days later, I look at her, and she's perfectly at home now.
Just comfortable.
Yep. And then it's most authors are super personable, even though we are introverts in many ways. It's a chance for us to actually talk with people about things that we are so passionate about. And it doesn't necessarily mean the business side of it, but just books and, the things that we love reading and whatnot. It's just, we're a weird bunch.
You connect with your people.
Exactly.
So I wanted to ask you, and I promise we're going to talk about the Toronto Indie Author Conference in a moment. But given your vast experience as an attendee at all these different conferences that you go to, I'm curious to hear your perspective on best practices, what authors can do when they're at the conference and even leading up to a conference. I've kind of got my personal list, but I wanted to hear your perspective as well.
Water.
Yes.
Bring a lot of water. Bring a big bag of throat lozenges, or the version or whatever equivalent of it. I like the ones with vitamin C in it. I literally eat them. Exactly.
Here, folks.
Something like that. Make sure you have that. You definitely want that. Mask up when you can, frankly speaking, because someone's going to have a cold and you're going to get grotty. It's going to get
someone's going to have something, guaranteed.
Exactly. You don't have to when you're talking in a bar or anything, but if you're especially through big conferences like 20 books to 50K, or Dragon Con, which I've gone to, where that's like 80,000 people.
Mm-hmm.
Someone's going to have something, and if they're coughing as you're walking through this crowd, and you catch it, it's nasty. But on top of that, a notebook of some form to take notes down on. I like taking photographs of business cards these days, rather than just taking business cards. I do take the business cards, but I take a lot of photographs of it. Some business cards can be useful. I don't give out a lot myself. So because not everyone needs it, or wants them these days. Just a willingness to talk to people. Ask around to find out where BarCon is.
BarCon, folks.
But if you can find small groups or Facebook groups or whatever beforehand that talk about what you're going to meet up or where it is, it's a good idea. Often there's people with little badges and whatnot that will say things like, first time attendee.
First timer,
you can go up to them and go, hey, are you first time like me? Help.
Yeah. And if there's an app, a lot of conferences have apps nowadays. And I would also suggest downloading that app. And a lot of times those apps will have little icebreaker type questions about who you are or what genre that you write in, where you're from, that sort of thing. Just little icebreakers. Then when you get to the conference, you meet up with the people that you've talked to in the days and weeks leading up to the conference. So that helps to make it easier as well.
I generally would say that you should try to write down at least 2 or 3 things that you want to get out of that conference by far. Whether it's just, a contact, you want to meet someone specifically,
Perfect.
You want to talk to someone, you want to go to a specific seminar, write it all down.
Have a game plan.
And realize that you don't have to go to all the seminars. By far, the first year, I find that everyone goes to all the seminars and sits down and enjoys all of it, because it's the first time you're going to it and you're learning so much. You don't know what people are talking about. You don't know what you don't know until that. By the time you come around the second year, there's a lot of repeats, because there's new people coming in every year. So there's a bunch that will be repeated and you're like, I don't need to go to that one. that's a great time to be sitting outside where people are, getting together and chilling to meet people and really just getting together with them. And that's where you can do a lot of good networking.
Yeah.
But there's no reason that you do not need to meet everyone and go to every single seminar.
Great point. Very good point. Take some rest. You might feel guilty for taking rest, especially if you paid for the conference, you paid for your travel and expenses to get there. But there's something to be said about the importance of taking a breather too. You might not want to sleep for a couple hours in your room, but just taking a breather, maybe in the hotel lounge. And then sometimes those conversations where you just go and grab a coffee and you sit down for a minute, those could be the best conversations of the entire event. I would also mention that for me anyway, I like to have my plan, what you mentioned already, just having some goal setting before the conference, and then downloading the schedule and really picking out those workshops that are must attends for me personally. And then when I get to the venue, I also try to get there early and figure out where the rooms are, because if you're traveling across the country and let's say you get there late at night the night before a conference, and then in the morning, especially if it's a bigger conference and there's crowds of people and you're stressed out because you're trying to find where to go, and the venue tends to be a maze, it's a way more relaxing approach if you just kind of know where you're going ahead of time, because on the morning of the first day of the event, then that way you can kind of sleepwalk your way to your first workshop.
Yeah, for sure. It is very much, then this is very much for much bigger conferences, right? But knowing where everything else is can make it so much simpler.
For sure. I want to start bringing up some comments and questions. Since we just mentioned business cards, I wanted to bring up this comment from our buddy, Mark Leslie the Fave, who says, I take photographs of business cards in case I lose them, and it auto syncs to my Google Photos online as a backup. Smart approach, Mark. I would also encourage authors who maybe haven't designed their business cards yet that glossy cards, they look great, but it's really hard to write on them. I take a ton of notes on business cards. Go with that. Go with the matte finish.
Yeah, and make sure you've got a lot of white space on the back, just so that there is a space for people to write on it. And if you're going to make a business card, don't put information that can be outdated on it, because we don't give out that many business cards as authors. At least I don't. And so if you put something that's going to be outdated very fast, the business card then has to be replaced. It's just an extra expense you don't need.
Yes, good point. Let me bring up this question and comment from Ace Adams. Ace asks, thanks for your question, Ace. He asks, what's your suggestion for someone like me? Over 24 books and barely making any money. I do have a nice email list and a decent website. I've revamped, but not making any headway. Do you have any suggestions?
I mean,
it's tough.
It's tough without looking in depth into what exactly it is. I would look at why you're not making money. Covers offer. So the way I look at it is this: if you've got a good cover, a good title, and a decent blurb, your book should be selling something. When you say throw it on a paid newsletter ad through Book Barbarian or whatever, Entertainment News Today, any of those services on paid newsletters, you throw it down to 99 cents. If you've got a good cover, you should be selling. If you're not selling when you've got that 99 cents thing on these paid newsletters, then you know that your cover isn't hitting the right thing, because at 99 cents, you should be getting some sales because this is a differentiated audience that wants to buy based off this. If you're not got the right cover, you're not going to sell anything because you're not on genre for some reason. That would be where I would start looking at it. If you're making sales and you're written in a series, I would look at your read-through rates, right? How many books of book one have you sold compared to how many books of book 2 to book 3? If you've got big drop off between book 1 to book 2 compared,
Mhm.
which is to me a big drop off is anything below 50%. That's a craft problem. You have done something in the way that you've written book 1 that doesn't lead people to want to read book 2. And that's, at the very least, you should be able to hit 50%. If you don't, there's something in the way that you've written it that is being a problem. And that's something that I would go back in and, talk to editors, talk to other authors who have read it and go, what's the problem? I know I've done that. I have a series called the Hidden Wishes series, and my read-through rate is barely 50% from book 1 to book 2. And the reason for that is I have a whole bunch of craft issues with it. We don't need to go into my problems, but I've done it too. It's not uncommon. We're all learning.
You're among friends here, Tao. It's okay.
Pretty much. But that's the way it is. So I think those would be the two things that I would look at is it a cover issue? Because if your cover's doing well, then you should be getting some sales in there.
Okay.
You can also get a newsletter. You can work with other people to help promote you as you go through. And if you're not getting a lot of ongoing sales, you need to look at how your sales funnel is built after people have finished reading through all your work. Do you have ways of getting them to come back to your other books?
Great. That kind of leads me to this question here from Love Nester. She says, my new ebook, Between Love and Lie, is on promotion and it is also very cheap. It is somehow short and it is so educative. How can I maximize the in-selling of the book? My author name is MKN Mujendi.
I'm not sure what they mean by in-selling.
I was wondering about that as well. Do you, Love Nester, do you mean like the back matter of your book? Perhaps like updating the back matter of your pre-existing books?
Yeah, I don't. I mean, if you're talking about how to increase total sales, a lot of it is setting up things like paid newsletter promos and auto swaps and social media. I would also probably look, if you've got a bit of money, at a burst series of Facebook ads, because that will get you out to a whole bunch of people. AMS ads running on a automated sequence for a very short period. Dear God, don't leave it running forever. Otherwise, you're gonna have problems. And there are ways to do that, but that's a different discussion entirely. To help promote the current sales for your promo. If you mean back end or getting to buy other stuff, I am a huge proponent of having bonus epilogues, bonus chapters at the end.
Yes.
That link up to a download, which they can only access via giving their email. So I send them to BookFunnel, has a landing page. They give me their email. They get emailed, bonus chapters or the bonus epilogue. I actually find bonus epilogues from what I write to work the best by far. Short stories in the same universe sort of work for me. I know other people have done much better with that. Free books or some form. But generally speaking, I like stuff that follow on from the book itself. I know romance authors do a lot of the weddings or the first baby or stuff like that. And I stole that from romance authors, by the way, because they're just the best.
Yeah, if you're going to steal from a genre, for sure. Yeah, so they're among the most professionally savvy in the industry.
Yep.
But hey, so here we are like 40 minutes into our conversation. I'm so enjoying this. And I've finally gotten to the question that I've been dying to ask you. And that is, given all of, your years worth of writing books and publishing books and attending gobs and gobs of events, what made you sit up and think, hey, I've got tons of time on my hands. I'm going to create my own event. What possessed you to create your own event?
Oh, so there is none in Canada. I mean, that's the short answer.
Okay.
There is no indie author conference in Canada.
Okay.
There are author conferences in Canada. There are not a lot of them. They're relatively small, but they're mostly focused on trad pub stuff, right? They're either half filled with craft and half filled with trad pub stuff with a little smattering of indie things. And it's very basic indie stuff. Or it's mostly craft and trad, and that's it. And so I had to go all the way down to 20 books to 50K to Nink to, places like Superstars to go and get the information that I got because I needed to go and, up my game. And I know I am incredibly fortunate to have the funds to do that. Not everyone can do it. And so I figured, you know what, let's try to do one in Canada. And I mean, any Canadian will tell you it's really expensive to go and travel through Canada. It's sometimes even more expensive to travel in Canada than across the States. But it is still, Ontario is a large hub of people. We've still got, Quebec real close by. So we can bring a lot of people in who might not have access to, Vegas, to Nink, and so forth. And so I wanted to bring it in and try to give people that opportunity to learn.
That's perfect. And that's a good time for me to bring up this question from Andy, Self-Pub with Andy. Hi, Andy. He asks, is there a link to the Toronto Indie Authors Conference? And I'm so glad you asked. Yes, there is. I showed it once before, but here it is. TorontoIndieAuthors.com. You can find registration links from that website. And let me circle back to a couple more questions here. But as I'm circling back to the questions, I wanted to also mention to all of our viewers out there that now I'm lucky because I get to talk to Tao here. And Tao, you strike me as such a generous, service-focused person, even though this is the first time we've spoken together. But I had a little bit of time before to go through your background and learn more about you. But I wanted to tell our viewers out there that you've got to check out Tao's website. And then once you get to his author website, venture over to his business publishing tab. And I'll put a link there in a moment because there is just there's a wealth of information and knowledge about the publishing business. And I guarantee that, here's the link. I guarantee that when you navigate over to the publishing business tab, it's on the right side of the screen from this website here. When you get there and you start scrolling down, you'll be amazed because you'll keep scrolling and you'll keep scrolling and you'll keep scrolling. There's advice on everything that there is, from conferences to manuscripts, I think editing, networking, marketing, and Tao's got it all organized into these different categories. You could spend days or weeks going through all of this material here. So for sure, check that out. Let's see.
I did want to mention something about the Toronto Indie Author Conference as well.
Please,
if you're
absolutely.
We do have an accessibility fund. So if you can't afford to pay for the tickets, just add yourself to, submit yourself in for the fund. Very soon we'll be emailing people who are who have won a ticket. But I think we've got 10 to 15 tickets paid for by other people already. And so, come by. I don't think we even have enough people at the time I'm speaking to cover all the tickets that have been paid for. So
wow,
please make use of it.
Fantastic. That's got to make you feel good about the event.
It is. I'm super happy with people like Kobo, Draft to Digital, who have, pitched in and paid for things like that and made it.
It's our pleasure to sponsor the event. Yeah. I have one more question here from one of our viewers. I hope I'm not forgetting anybody else out there. From Alina, who asks, who comments, I did a Facebook campaign that had phenomenal results. What kind of sales should I expect? There is 1,086 people who liked my ad. What do you think about that?
I don't pay attention to likes as much because likes are, depending on where you target and how you targeted the ads, it's very easy to get likes. The thing that I always pay attention to, and I talk about it, is my sales, right?
Okay.
Before I start any advertising campaign, is I create a benchmark level of what my income is. So I am making $5 a day right now of these books, and that's what it is. I start advertising. Now I'm making $8 a day. Great. Now I know roughly that $3 increase should be over, and if you give it over a period of time, you don't want one day spikes. That should be coming from my advertising. That's what I'm looking at. And so that's what I would recommend is you go back, look at when you started the ads, and then look back 30 to 90 days. What were your sales for those books that you are advertising beforehand? And how much of an increase have you seen since you started advertising? This presupposes that you're not doing any major other forms of advertising that you started. Like if you started a TikTok series and a Facebook ad series and Instagram, and then everything gets jumbled up and you can't tell what's going where. And then then it becomes much more difficult. You can do things like use Amazon's attribution links, which they have created so that they can track sales all the way through, which should give you a better idea. If you do that, obviously that only works for Amazon sales. It only works for ebook and Kindle Unlimited reads. It does not take into account audiobook reads at all. So audiobook sales, sorry. And it misses a good third of sales and about 2/3 of your Kindle Unlimited reads. So, keep that in mind when you're looking at those stats, and, which is why I kind of like using benchmarks, because if you know what the benchmark level is, it doesn't matter. That's an increase, right? All of these issues with cookies and what's tracked and whatnot isn't. So going straight from saying my ad has done well, what should my sales be? It doesn't work.
It's not. Okay.
I will say I try to target for a minimum of 3 to 1 ads return on investment. So if I'm spending $5 on my ad, I want to see a $15 increase in my sales. Preferably more. 5 is that's the goal. If I can get 5 to 1, that's my goal. 3 to 1, I will live with and I'll accept it. If it's an older series, that's what I expect. Anything below 3 to 1, it becomes tricky because even minor fluctuations, you start potentially losing money on your ads.
Interesting. There's so much to learn about ads and so much to know. Do you cover ads on your website in the publishing business section of your website as well?
I have a little bit. I talk about the benchmarking system and how I do it. I talk a little bit about Facebook and whatnot.
Just reminding folks of that link.
And Amazon, I think I do talk about AMS. I try more to write about strategy than specifics. The problem I find with specifics is it changes.
And your mileage may vary based on your genre.
Mileage will vary so much, but the software changes. Like Facebook ads, what worked 2 years ago for Facebook ads does not work anymore. They've changed their systems. They've changed how they're doing things. And so now you have to relearn everything. And so anything that I wrote 2 years ago that was very specific might not be very, how to do it. And so it becomes a problem. And I don't really like that.
That makes sense. I think that's excellent advice. And we're at time already for this conversation. I'm sorry to say. I wanted to bring up Andy's comment. Thanks, Andy. Like button booped. We appreciate that. And just want to remind you all, if you can all like, share, comment, subscribe, and boop that like button, we really appreciate that because that helps us attract and invite guests like Tao here who can come and share their advice, experiences, and expertise with all of us. Also, if you would, please be sure to bookmark d2dlive.com, because if you do so, you can see what our next topic is going to be in subsequent weeks and who our guests are going to be as well. And then finally, for those of you who may be aspiring authors and you're maybe just dipping your toe into the indie publishing waters, why not sign up for a free draft to digital account by going to draft2digital.com. Well, everyone, I want to thank you all for spending your time with us this Thursday. We so appreciate all of our viewers and all of you who have joined us. Tao, thanks again. Thanks a million for joining us today. We really appreciate you being here with us. It's been a fantastic conversation. It went by like that for me.
Yeah, so I think we spent a little too much time not talking about the conference itself. But, it happens. Come by. A lot of questions that you ask, we've got speakers at seminars and people who will be able to answer it. We have roundtables where you can get into specific nitty-gritty details where we can actually, answer those questions, because we can literally pull out your laptop and go, show me your laptop, show me your sales, show me what you're doing. So that's one of the things I really wanted to have with that, is these roundtables that I stole the idea from Nick, because you can get into detail about things like that. Otherwise, it's hard.
Yeah, so you've customized this conference for indie authors and made it
as much as possible. Yeah,
intimate for them. Yeah, these roundtables make those conversations intimate, so you can learn as much as you possibly can.
Yep.
Fantastic. Well, thanks again, Tao. Hang out for a minute over in the green room. We'll chat after the conversation. For the rest of you, thanks again for joining us. I'm going to play a quick 30-second commercial here about D2D print. Thanks, everybody.
Ebooks are great, but there's just something about having your words in print. Something you can hold in your hands, put on a shelf, sign for a reader. That's why we created D2D Print, a print-on-demand service that was built for you. We have free, beautiful templates to give your book a pro look, and we can even convert your ebook cover into a full wraparound cover for print. So many options for you and your books. And you can get started right now at draft2digital.com.